Mantan Presiden Timor Leste yang juga utusan khusus urusan Papua Ramos Horta mengatakan masyarakat Papua masih percaya dengan pemerintah Indonesia. Mereka tidak ingin memisahkan diri dari Indonesia. Dalam skala ASEAN, gejolak yang terjadi di Papua saat ini merupakan hal minor. Menurut Horta, pendekatan holistik yang digagas oleh Presiden Jokowi akan memberikan dampak pada pemikiran dan persepsi warga Papua. Dan pemirsa, berikut wawancara bersama Ramos Horta yang dipandu oleh Carlos Michael.
Mr. Ramos, since January 2030, you become the United Nations envoy, special envoy to Guinea-Bissau. What do you do?
Well, I was the special envoy representative there for over a year and a half to help the people there, help the United Nations, bring in constitutional order back to the country following a military coup. And the mission was considered a complete success. I was congratulated by the Secretary General, by African leaders. And then the Secretary General asked me to chair a high-level independent panel on United Nations peace operations. And that is to review the work of all United Nations operations around the world, particularly the peacekeeping forces. I did the work for almost 1 year and presented the report to the Secretary General, Security Council, General Assembly, and now I'm going to New York precisely for a special session of the UN General Assembly to discuss my report and recommendations on how to make the UN more effective in preventing conflicts or in resolving conflicts when the conflicts happen, like in Syria. Total failure by the international community in preventing the conflict and in negotiating an end till today.
Yeah, Mr. Ramos, as an international figure, okay, talking about Papua, what the problem you see there?
Well, when you look at the challenges in Papua, they are very, very small, minor. When you look at the much bigger problems, even in Southeast Asia, there is no comparison with the problems in southern Philippines, southern Thailand, Myanmar. It's a very low-level conflict. The problem in Papua is primarily a social problem, poverty problem, inequality.
Not political problem.
Of course, it's political, but I would say the political problem derives from the social problem, in the sense of lack of hope by the people. However, with President Jokowi Widodo initiating new policies in regard to Papua, with a holistic, integrated, comprehensive approach to Papua. How to address poverty in Papua. You don't address just by throwing money at Papua. You provide more resources, more money, but more training, more capacity building, more empowering of Papuans, more education and training for them, but also addressing the root causes of the unhappiness. And the root causes have to do with the sense of they feel like second-class citizens, lack of a future. So this holistic approach the President is proposing, I believe, will have a significant impact in the minds and perceptions of the people there.
Yeah, Mr. Ramos, you once said the people of Papua still give credence to Indonesia government. In your opinion, what makes the Papuan people still believe?
Well, we cannot compare situation of Indonesia today, particularly after 99, with the fall of the Suharto era until today. Of course, immediately after the fall of the Suharto era, you cannot automatically, things change. You know, it doesn't happen just like that. A regime goes, a new one comes, the next day everything changes. No, of course, you have to start the very long process of building democracy, rule of law, improving the economy, and at the same time Indonesia was facing its own internal instability after 98, 99. With SBI, things began to consolidate. You know, things began to stabilize in Indonesia. The economy started growing. You have a man who is really from the people. He was very successful in Solo and in Jakarta, known as a man of the people, a man of action and simplicity, humility. And that's what the world needs. The world needs people like President Jokowi, who are men of the people. And so he inspired people. They trust him because they feel he is one of ours. And we can see that in a bit over 1 year, he's already improving the economy of Indonesia. In spite of the world recession, in spite of the serious challenges with the Chinese economy, slow growth, almost recession basically in Japan. You have Singapore next door, which faces serious economic and fiscal problems, but Indonesia is growing at over 5%. And that partly result of domestic economy, the reforms, the trust by foreign investors in the policies of President Jokowi. A lot of foreign investments coming. So in 2 years, he has already made tremendous difference. And if these policies continue, another 3-5 years from now, Indonesia will be a very powerful economic force in the region. In regard to Papua, the same reaction. You know, people watch. You know, the common people in Java, in Sumatra, in Sulawesi, everywhere, when they look at President Jokowi, is the same way the people in Papua, they look. They admire him, they trust him. Now a question of delivering. You know, we create hopes, expectation, and they hope that their life is going to improve with you. And I believe with a holistic approach the government has proposed that has to include dialogue, persistent, ongoing dialogue, listening to the people in Papua, to feel, so that they feel they are really part of Indonesia. We should not exaggerate or overreact to media coverage of any situation. If you actually look at the number of headlines around the world, particularly in the West, about the situation in Papua, is very, very limited. The world is preoccupied with Syria, Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan. And the Europeans completely overwhelmed by the economic, financial crisis, and particularly the refugee crisis. There is continuing serious financial economic problems in Europe. You go to the US Congress, no one is thinking about the rest of the world. Maybe they think about China now, maybe about Russia, but they are preoccupied with the elections. And after the new president is elected in November, they are not going to think about immediately other issues. So we have to look in perspective. So my advice also to West Papuans is focus on how to work together inside Papua to improve the situation for everybody. They have a great chance with this President Jokowi, a humble person, honest, who wants to change things in Papua. So give him a chance, work with him. And my advice to young Papuans, seize every opportunity to study, study, and study. Papua will never grow if its people do not study hard. So instead of carrying out to a so-called armed struggle, totally make no sense when you have a democratic government. You could understand if there is tyranny, when you have a totalitarian regime that refuses democracy. When you have a totally open democratic system where there are free elections in the country and you have an armed struggle, no one is going to support that. So I would say work with the government. And I know many Papuans who in the past live abroad, in Sweden and else, they have returned. And I respect them, I know who they are, and they return because they have hopes with the new Indonesia. So that's my message. And as a brother, as someone who understands Indonesia, understands the Papuans, that's my advice. The best for their people in Papua to improve their lives is to work with the central government in Indonesia, to work with the government now, with the president, with Pak Luhut Panjaitan, work with the Indonesian society, come to Jakarta, talk to the politicians here, talk to academics, talk to the media, create their lobby in Indonesia, not lobby outside Indonesia.
Mr. Ramos, I would like to know your position about Papua. Are you going to help the Indonesia government to resolve the Papua?
If the Indonesian government wishes me to continue to help, yes, but Indonesia has a lot of experience in handling difficult situations, much more difficult than Papua, like Aceh. Aceh was far more difficult than Papua. The GAM in the past, in the 70s and 80s, carry out armed struggle, and a very violent armed struggle. Compared with Papuans, OPM were angels. When you look at the behavior of GAM, I personally never wanted anything to do with the GAM because of the violence they did. But in the end, the central government sat down and talked with GAM. Now they have a special autonomy status. Apparently things are going reasonably well in Aceh. No longer anyone talk about separation. And so that's will be more easily happen in Papua.
Yeah, Mr. Ramos, on the issue of human rights in Papua, you see there something urgent in Papua?
The policies of President Jokowi implemented by Pak Luhut Panjaitan is total openness, no hiding problems. Problems have to be discussed, put on the table. So I believe that if there are human rights problems, violations in Papua, civil society, NGOs in Indonesia with experience dealing with human rights situation, they should monitor, report in a credible fashion to the President's office, take to the Indonesian Parliament, to the media in Indonesia.